it's Fraser Butler, and I think it's Robin is our next witness.
That's correct, Robin Worsley.
No, not the moment. Quite happy to stand up for this, yes.
Okay. Please state your full name
Robert Abel Worsley.
and take the book in your raised hand and repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Robin, you're now 80 years old
Exactly, yes.
and you've worked all your life as a farmer.
Well, I'm retired now, but yes.
And previously you were doing dairy farming,
I've done the majority of farming, yes.
but all of it was pretty tough, very physical work.
As a farmer, you're your own boss. The shop's never shut. It's 7 days a week.
When you were a teenager, you were a very keen rugby player, I think.
I've always been keen on rugby, yes.
And you played for Gloucester.
Until I managed to break the cartilage in my knee, yes.
You then had a very bad accident playing rugby and
yes.
damaged your knee. Your right knee continued to cause quite a lot of difficulty for you.
My knee did, yes, and they had to replace the cartilage, or they didn't, they took it out actually, which was the end of my rugby days.
And eventually in June 1991, when you were 52, you underwent a femoral osteotomy.
Correct.
Can you tell us what that is, or what you understood it to be?
What I understood is that they cut the femur in half and twisted around and so that your knee rests on a different place. And this resulted in the fact that I didn't need a new knee for another 15, 20 years.
And during that operation, you were given a blood transfusion.
I understood afterwards that I was told I had had a transfusion, yes.
And it's from that transfusion in 1991 that you understand that you were infected with hepatitis C.
I can't think of any other time that it could have been. To my knowledge, I don't recollect having had another transfusion. I did have other accidents. Unfortunately, farming is and rugby are fairly dangerous occupations.
Before you were given the blood transfusion, you weren't warned of any risks because you weren't. It happened while you were being operated on, and there was no discussion about that.
No, I just knew afterwards, was told afterwards, that I had been given a transfusion.
After the operation, having been given the transfusion, were you warned of any risks involved in having had that transfusion?
No.
After that operation, after the blood transfusion, you carried on working as a farmer?
Absolutely.
You didn't notice any particular physical symptoms arising from that
Nothing
blood transfusion?
at all. No.
You also continued to give blood after the operation.
I have always tried to give back as much as I can, and was certainly a blood donor, and continue to do this.
You're fairly sure that you continued to give blood from the date of the operation at least until the Lookback exercise in 95, possibly after that?
I think at least until then, yes. I mean, not necessarily on a particular regular basis, but the transfusion service used to come to the local town and, notices went up everywhere, and those that could went along and gave blood. It was a way of giving something back.
In August 1995, you received a letter from the National Blood Service. What did that tell you?
That they were doing what they called a lookback. And I was advised to go and see my GP, who would try and explain it all to me.
You've said you'd never have known that you had hepatitis C if you hadn't received that look-back letter.
No,
As far as you were concerned, there was nothing of concern in terms of your physical health.
no, nothing whatsoever.
After you got the letter, what did you do?
I went to see the doctor. The doctor, my local GP, he didn't know a lot about it at the time, but he did find out. Took the blood tests, and which came back positive.
So you'd gone to your GP in about August 95, you got the results in September 1995. Exactly what did the GP tell you when he told you you had it?
That I had, obviously I had to have, it had been given infected blood. This wasn't confirmed till sometime later, when I went into hospital and had another and they removed whatever it's called.
A liver biopsy.
Gave me a liver biopsy, yeah.
So your GP referred you to your local district hospital.
Yeah,
And you had the liver biopsy.
yeah.
And do you remember what that showed?
It was significant scarring.
Did either the GP or the local district hospital tell you very much about what hepatitis C was?
Not really. Not much, no. Most of it came from my elder daughter.
Before we get to what your elder daughter could tell you, I just want to ask you a little bit more about what you were told. Were you told anything about the treatments that might be available to you by the GP?
I can't recollect that it was, no.
And were you told anything about the risks of transmission?
A little bit, no, but did not that I made anything much of it. No, not a lot.
So what did you understand the situation to be
That
before you
I'd
started
been given
talking?
this, but as it never affected me in any way, I'm afraid I didn't fuss too much about it. Life goes on.
Now, as it happened, at that time, your daughter worked for a pharmaceutical company that produced interferon.
Correct.
And what did she tell you to do?
She advised me to go to down to Exeter, the Royal Devon and Exeter Hospital. She said they had the best hepatologist down there, and I asked to be treated there. Saw the doctor down there, and as I have said in my statement, eventually treatment started.
It was your daughter, wasn't it, that explained to you a little bit more about what hepatitis C actually was?
Well, she did. She did then say how infectious it was and how careful I should be. But, I mean, I'm sorry, but I did not, as it really didn't affect me that much. I was not aware of the dangers of too much of passing it on. I mean, Fiona did stress this.
But you hadn't been told that by your GP or the district hospital?
It hadn't been stressed to me at all.
That very much came from your daughter?
That very much came from my elder daughter, yes.
And then subsequently from the Royal Devon and Exeter?
Definitely from the Royal Devon and Exeter, yes.
You were then looked after by the Royal Devon and Exeter throughout your treatment until 2017 when you were discharged from their care. Through that time with the Exeter Hospital, they also then explained to you exactly what hepatitis C was and the risks in relation to transmission.
Yes, the hepatology nurse down there who, in fact, treated me. And I think after all these years, the same nurse is still there in charge of it. And she did explain that she was going into prisons and various different things, and how dangerous it was, and how careful I should be.
When you went to the Exeter Hospital, there's just one point that I think is helpful for us to hear. You went in for your appointments, didn't you? And on the same day, you had your blood tests or fibroscan or whatever you were going in for, and then saw the consultant on the same day.
That's right. No, I did. I mean, luckily the train is, Tumbercombe Station is just down the road from me. And I could get on the train, go straight to Exeter, and get a bus up to the hospital. This was particularly important, as when I was on the treatment, I was warned that I could get all sorts of reactions.
But even before you were on the treatment, if you had to go for any tests or scans, they were done on the same day as when you saw the consultant and got the results.
Well, as I had some distance to travel, I rather insisted on that. And I said, for goodness sake, I really don't want to be going up and down all the time. I want it all done on the same day, which they complied with. Sorry, can I?
Of course. In 2005, you started treatment to clear the virus.
Yes.
And you had interferon and ribavirin for about 6 months.
Exactly, yep.
And you were warned that there'd be very bad side effects.
I was warned that I could have very bad, which is why I should not drive, and I should go on the train, which was quite simple for me.
And how did you feel while you were on the treatment?
Didn't affect me at all. I was one of the lucky ones.
You were able to carry on working?
Yep.
And you had no real physical symptoms at all?
None whatsoever.
And you successfully cleared the virus first time?
Yep.
So you were discharged from the Royal Exeter in August 2017?
I was going every year, annually, for blood tests and fibroscans and all of the newer ways of scanning. Yes, every year. Fortunately, there was not many changes.
And you feel you received really excellent care from the Royal Exeter?
I did receive care from Exeter, yes.
From the date you were told you had hepatitis C until you were told you'd cleared the virus, you've obviously said that you had very few physical effects, but how did you feel mentally?
Once I knew what had happened, I felt it was rather like a time bomb that could go off at any time. When it had been actually drummed into my head, what I had got and how lucky I was. And then I thought, well, for goodness sake, this can... I realised then the situation I was in, and not a nice place to be.
Can you tell us any more about how you were feeling during
Well,
that
not
time?
really. It was just that I just never knew quite what was going to happen or what could happen. I had been told by the hepatology nurse in Exeter, very graphically. I had seen others in the clinics down there, and of what could happen to me. And fortunately, it never did.
You've described it in your statement as, in the years before you cleared hepatitis C, it was like living with a time bomb and constantly waiting for it to go off.
Exactly.
Now, your daughters have said that you're one of those people who just gets on with things. Was that your approach
Yep.
to it?
Well, I just feel, we're all here, we've got to make the best of it.
In all of that time, did you face any stigma from your infection?
Not really. No, definitely not. I didn't hide it, but I didn't tell everybody.
There was
I
one.
may have told more people about the fact I was coming up here, actually. Than
There was one occasion, though, wasn't there, where you were asked initially to be on television.
This was early on with the Liver Trust, and they interviewed me on the farm, and I wasn't considered angry enough to be used, put it that way.
You were interviewed for the television to explain what you'd gone through with the whole blood scandal, and they interviewed you so you could make a case.
That's right. Well, I don't think they wanted. I wasn't newsworthy, put it that way, or I didn't put it over strongly enough for them.
You weren't angry enough,
I
so it
weren't
wouldn't
angry
have the
enough for the
impact.
press,
You've received some payments from the Skipton Fund.
Yes.
Do you have any observations you want to make about the funds?
The only observation, I mean, I have received it and obviously still am, but I do object strongly to the fact that we were given, through no fault of our own, infected blood, and why should anybody have to go with means testing or anything else for something which was not their fault? I mean, I think it is, it was quite wrong. We never should have been in this situation, and why should anybody be means tested?
Those are the questions I have for you. Is there anything else you would like to say?
I think the donations part of it, blood donations part, is important. I can't give any exact dates, but I would stress really that this whole situation should never have happened, and why has it taken so long?
Just on the blood donations, we picked up on that earlier, but just to clarify, you are confident you did give blood prior to the Lookback?
Yes.
But you're worried about whether you also gave blood after the Lookback?
I could have, but I mean, as I was saying, it's quite a long time ago. I don't keep records of this. My local GP surgery have been very good at finding letters, which I've submitted to you, over the operations and things like that. But somebody's probably got a record somewhere.
Thank you.
Well, Robin, thank you very much indeed for coming to give your evidence. It's a rather different perspective than some that we have seen, so thank you very much for that.
Good.
Well, that concludes. I'm sorry, I should have waited for Robin to sit down. My apologies. That concludes the evidence for today.
It does.
Who are we hearing from tomorrow?
Tomorrow we will be hearing from Andrew Evans, Ms. D and Colette Wintle.
And that starts at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
So 10 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you very much.